But as a leader, I think it's also important that we embrace this mindset. The mindset that being a leader requires you to be different because you carry a great responsibility. And I think it's important to recognize the ways in which we are different. And the first is this time perspective. Most of the people in your company today are focused on what? They're focused on the here and now, the present. And that's good. That's what many are paid to do. But when you move into leadership roles where many of you listening currently reside, you got to start having a foot in the present, a foot in tomorrow, and you even got to have a foot in the past. And I realize that's tough because you only have 2 feet. But what I've found is leaders naturally struggle getting that balance right. We've all seen the leader who lives in the past. Everything's about the way we used to do things. Everything's about maintaining the status quo, and the focus is solely on the past. More rare is that there are leaders that are so forward-thinking, so futuristic that they miss the present. And we got to get this delicate balance correct between the past, the present, and the future. You can't get stuck for too long in any one of them as a leader. And, you know, we've talked a lot about the future. And this quote here is attributed to Abe Lincoln. The best way to predict the future is to create it. To me, and I think for us, this is a bit of a warning that when we're up on the balcony, we're not trying to necessarily predict the future. What we're doing is pulling from all of our resources, our data, our peers, our competition, trying to connect the dots to create our future. Create a future that our organization, our teams can see clearly and know the demands it will take to get there. So I think that's an important distinction to consider. Number 2, we said, as a leader, you're in the business of influencing. The second you walk in the building, the second you get out of your truck on the job site, the second you sit down with your team around the conference table, you are influencing people. And if you think back to our definition of leadership, for those of you that have been with us since January, it's a process where we're influencing others. And we do that by providing purpose, direction, and motivation to accomplish the mission. But never forget that what separates you is this important role of influencing. And it's really important to think about the influential role that you play as a leader and how it can separate you from your peers on the leadership ladder as you climb it. Number 3, I think you got to pay more attention as a leader to relationships. And this has been, and Dr. Barnes would probably know more, but this has been a dramatic shift in the way leadership is viewed over the past decade. Strong relationships foster trust, which is the foundation of effective leadership. When team members trust you, when they trust their leader, they're more likely to follow your guidance, more likely to be open about their concerns and work collaboratively toward shared goals. Trust enhances a leader's credibility, making it easier to influence and motivate others. Remember, leadership is not just about directing others. It's about bringing people together to achieve common objectives. Building these solid relationships encourages collaboration and open communication with the team. When your crew or your team feels connected, they're going to be more willing to share ideas and to support one another and work together to overcome the myriad of challenges you all face on a daily basis. And that's ultimately going to lead to better outcomes. And lastly, I'd say that leaders who prioritize relationships create a positive work environment where all employees feel valued and supported. And this naturally leads to higher levels of engagement and satisfaction and loyalty and all those things about retention that we've talked so much about. So you need to know who your people are outside of the office. You need to have your thumb on the pulse of your team. And to do this, you need to have emotional intelligence, right? Recognizing the components that enable you to build these relationships. And look, it's different when you're the leader, when the eyeballs are on you, when you're the head coach. You can't just put your head in some drawings and count fixtures. Focus solely on a bid. As you move into leadership positions, the ability to forge relationships becomes absolutely paramount. The emphasis today by the C-suite on the relational aspect of business has never been more important, in my opinion. And we covered this idea of the in and out group. Remember how in the old days, you could have one leadership style and it was everyone else's responsibility to adjust to you. Those days are long gone. You see here on the right, this concept of dyadic relationships, where you're meeting in the middle and truly creating a relationship. It's about getting to know your team on a deeper level. How the kids? How your parents? How was Sarah's ballet recital last night? You have to recognize the importance of deeper relationships with your employees. They will help drive outcomes that you want. Number 4, and this one's really important to me, is this concept of servant leadership. It's a model that came from Greenleaf, this idea of focusing on well-being and growth of our people. Obviously, very closely related to the relational piece that we just discussed. But if we put people first, we all win in the end. And I get it. This is a more modern conceptualization of leadership. But in my opinion, it's such an impactful style for both the leader and the follower. Set your team up for success. Focus on the development of others. You'll be absolutely amazed at the outcomes and performances you get with this leadership style, because you're building that engagement, you're building trust, you're building satisfaction, you're building commitment. They can feel your sincere interest in their growth. And the byproduct of that is amazing. And the 5th way I think that leaders are different is your viewpoint. It has to be different when you're up on that balcony. And I think you all know that the vantage point from above is different than that on the dance floor. Your depth of field, as this image shows, is different. Remember, when you're up there, you're not just looking at the construction industry in New York or Arizona or in California or in Pittsburgh, right? You're taking in perspective, that pestle analysis. What's going on politically, environmentally? What's going on in society? How are all these different elements coming together? And what's that mean for how we position our company in the future? How can we create strategic goals and objectives that best position our construction firms to be profitable and sustainable in this VUCA post-pandemic disrupted and now 4th industrial revolution world that we all do business in? So I think this is a nice backdrop for all of us to consider the ways that we need to be different as a leader. I've given you 5 examples that I feel like, make you stand apart, that show those differences. But it's important to reflect yourselves on where you feel you need the most work. What are some other differences? Where can you improve as we move rapidly to the 4th quarter of 2024?